Welcome back to Direct Station, where politics are in retrograde. I am Kate Carey. This week, we're going to do something we haven't typically done, which is the same topic 2 weeks in a row, because for the first time, we are watching an administration struggle to put a story away. So we have a topic that has continued to expand and unfold into its second week, and we have a different way to look at it now. So I want to look at it through this idea of this ancient principle that is sometimes, say, this ancient allegory, this ancient saying that is sometimes credited to the Buddha. 3 things cannot long be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. This week, we watched that idea begin to play out in real time as the first real crisis to truly threaten Trump's power within his coalition escalated. In an effort to continue to hide the truth, of course, his administration fired Maureen Comey, the federal prosecutor with a notorious family name, who built the cases against Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She was fired and removed from her post as assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. As this latest attempt at obfuscation occurred, though, those of us watching the sky tracked this little asteroid named Sedna, who is associated with feminine resurrection and power, come closer and closer within slightly more than a degree of Uranus, the planet of revolution and change, for the first time in 93 years. This is a big deal. This is significant. Let's look at it. For those just joining, hi. Thanks for trying this weird idea I have of combining an obsession with politics, power, and social movements with one of everything going on above us in that wide, wide sky. Here we track what's happening with the humans by looking at the archetypal patterns playing out up there. You don't need to believe in astrology or be steeped in political details. The idea here is to gain simply a broader view and to understand the deeper currents beneath our collective chaos, to place our suffering, our fear, our anger, our national nightmare into a longer and wider context. And what I'm seeing from up there is extraordinary this week. And it gives me reason to believe that the beginning of the undoing of the MAGA coalition has historical echoes within it that are worth studying. We're going to look at American history in the 30s, British history in the 1840s, and even this wonderful, quirky example from Portugal in the mid-1700s. It'll be fun. We'll gather some relevant literary guidance, some poetry, and spend a little bit of time understanding how to gird and ground ourselves for the role each of us needs to play in the mutable months and years ahead. There will be references to sexual harm in this episode, but as a survivor myself, I will strive to wrap those references in a stable and knowing hope. So join us. Let's start with what makes this moment cosmically unprecedented. That ancient saying, assuring us the truth will out, reflects something about the nature of reality that modern politics keeps trying to ignore. The truth has its own life force, its own timing, its own way of breaking through concealment. But what we don't yet know is what happens when that truth emerges under a sky that includes the most disruptive, revolutionary, and I would say supportive astrological dynamics in human history. I don't usually do the same topic 2 weeks in a row, but if you think about how rare it is for our politics to hover around one story more than a few days, it seemed like an appropriate thing to do. So let's look at what happened this week, because the cascade of revelations has been extraordinary. So as you know, the Trump presidential campaigns have always leaned heavily on conspiracy theories. The first time it was Obama's birth certificate, right? Over time, he's really entertained and deepened this idea of the deep state as this idea that there are coordinated, rich, and powerful people doing their damnedest to take all and leave nothing to the little guy, hiding their secrets, causing harm with impunity, stealing, grifting, etc. So this deep state idea found a great place to thrive inside the QAnon theory, which Trump leaned into in order to expand his coalition. It worked great. Epstein was a big part of that process as his strange death and strange wealth came into scrutiny. And his involvement with key hated targets of MAGA, including the Clintons and Bill Gates, and while it just seemed like a fine conspiracy theory to pursue, Trump let it ride. I honestly think he assumed he'd end up just getting away with it like he does everything else, and he just kind of nodded along and said, yeah, sure, I'll help with that. Yeah, totally. You'll have all the answers you need. Well, they disappointed their base by saying, never mind. That was the news from the week before last, right? Last week's news included a bombshell story from the Wall Street Journal about a suspicious and icky birthday card Trump sent Epstein in 2003, celebrating all the special things they had in common, featuring a hand-drawn naked lady with Trump's signature replacing her pubic hair, and concluding with a birthday wish that every day might be another wonderful secret. Really, those words. So Trump immediately filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the Journal, and there seems to have been a bit of that familiar rally around the president energy that we saw so much of when he was on trial. With less fanfare and effect, the New York Times also this week, last week, I should say, published detailed reporting on the timeline of the Trump-Epstein friendship, including testimony from a woman who met Trump while employed by Epstein, in which, this morning, they came out with this story. This woman described a deeply troubling circumstance. Trump leers at her in his office, and Epstein says something to the effect of, nah, you can't have this one. There's also this wild New Yorker interview where David Rednick spoke to the best-selling author of like 6 books about Trump, this guy, Michael Wolff, about his 100 hours of recorded conversations with Epstein himself, wherein Epstein describes himself as Trump's closest friend for 10 years. He details their shared pursuit of women. He claims they shared a girlfriend for nearly a year. And he reported that Trump and his wife, his current wife, first enjoyed each other's intimate company on the notorious Lolita Express plane. Wolff shared that he had seen photographs from Epstein's safe, which he presumes to be in the possession of the FBI, showing Trump with topless young women, including what he describes as a telltale stain on the front of Trump's pants, while the girls point and laugh. So, while that frequency of new information and new scrutiny continues to rise, we are all seeing survivors' voices finally break through the conspiracy noise online as well. I don't know about your timeline, but mine has become more informed by the voices of survivors in this case. Women who've been telling their truth for years are getting more attention, right? More platform, more belief, more faith. The influencers who built careers on promising secret revelations are starting to fracture, predictably. Some are doubling down, some are circling back to support their president, and others are beginning to acknowledge that maybe they have been misled. We'll see how that turns out. But of course, there was the firing of the legal warrior who put the man and his co-conspirator away, Maureen Comey, whose colleagues escorted her out of the building in solidarity last week. In her farewell note to them, she said, quote, "Fear is the tool of a tyrant, wielded to suppress independent thought. Do not let that happen." Okay. So what is going on in the sky that might explain this new challenge to Trump's lies and the increasing flow of new information? What is changing up there? Why is this thing carrying on for more than 3 or 4 days, which is the extent of any bad news we ever get about Trump, right? It kind of fizzles out. Okay, so the most important thing that we've been talking about up there for a while is this arrangement that some are calling the Great Pyramid. I should come up with my own name for it, I think. But today we'll go with the Great Pyramid. It's a giant triangle in the sky. It's a triangle that is slow moving, getting into exact angles at different corners at different times. But it's a really big deal. Each of the 3 corners in that arrangement are huge and have had huge impacts on human history on their own, right? Each of these events, each of these sort of placements has been a big deal when they've happened alone, when they've occurred in the past, but they have never all 3 happened the way they are now at the same time. And so we just literally don't know. We have fine guesses, but we don't really know what's unfurling here. We know it's huge. We know it's peaking next February. We know it starts to dissipate by the fall of 2028. And we know there are signatures that have included wars, terrorism, health events, revolutions, the beginnings and ends of nation states, unprecedented freedoms, and extraordinary upheaval. Like, just because I know what an apple pie in my kitchen tends to cause, and what a pot full of hot fat tends to cause, and an overflowing basket of fruit tends to feel like, I never really done anything that includes all three of those phenomena at the same time, right? So that's the Great Pyramid. It's enormous. It's never all happened at the same time. Even though we understand different parts of it, we do not totally get, we cannot totally predict what this triumvirate will achieve over the course of the next 3 or 4 years. And it keeps popping into new and powerful aspects with other planets as everything that moves a little faster comes into contact with it. So that pyramid, those 3 spots, are worth describing. But please don't worry about proper nouns or even which planets are which right now. I just want you to understand the vibes today. So the vibes are 1, the planet most likely to cause change. 2, the planet most likely to signify trauma, depth, and transformation. And 3, a meetup of the planets of discipline and delusion. If you're wondering what happens when discipline and delusion meet up, you are not alone. I mean, it's quite a context, right? So some kind of potent brew of chaos, transformation through pain, consequences, dreams, revolution, right? That's only the background noise. I'm telling you, this is a wild time, as if you hadn't noticed that. That's the general bananas feeling of our moment, of our collective moment, right? We all have that Great Pyramid affecting our charts too as individuals. So every time I do a reading and I look at the parts of the person's life being completely rearranged at the moment, and everybody's life is being rearranged in some way at the moment, I assure you, I'm always like, I promise this configuration is a lot for everyone, right? And so it is. It's not all bad at all, but it is a lot for everyone. Okay, so in that mix, there's something really cool that I want to tell you about. I told you about one asteroid last week, and that was important, I think, and exciting. But there's a few others in play, and today I want to emphasize what I see happening with the asteroid associated with the Inuit goddess Sedna. Sedna's story is one of betrayal, of the feminine, and the use of that betrayal, of that pain, of that insight, and the power that comes with that pain. Right? So transformation that comes out of betrayal. The story goes something like this. It starts a little bit like the story in the Brave movie, actually, simply because there's this universal element of the father wanting to marry his daughter to expand his political power or his command of resources, right? It's an old tale, right? So her dad has a fella in mind. She's not into it. She runs off in a canoe. Her dad catches up to her. He is violent, and she falls into the sea. But she does not die. She becomes the goddess of the sea, this powerful force beneath the waves who can control the sea mammals, the whales, the seals, the walruses. The Inuit hunters pray to her, right? Because she can decide whether or not to send nourishment to the people. That's Sedna. When I see Sedna in a strong placement in someone's chart, I know there are themes of betrayal and of enough strength that there has been or will be a great rising in spite of that betrayal. Okay, so Sedna, goddess of the strength of the deep northern sea, is now conjunct Uranus, the planet of sudden unexpected change. And it's a big deal because the last time they were hanging out was the Great Depression. And these two together are part of that great pyramid of flowing energy now, with these other huge forces, right, in this unprecedented arrangement. Sedna and Uranus are one of the points, are one of the 3 points in that triangle. Think about what that means. Sedna, the betrayed sea goddess who transforms her trauma into oceanic power, merged with Uranus, the planet of revolutionary change, while other forces are bringing about revelations of truth, new consequences, the undoing of delusions, and power structures, right? This isn't harsh, punitive energy like we've seen in previous reckonings. This is flowing, supportive cosmic weather for not just revealing harm, but actually transforming the systems that enabled the harm in the first place. And threading through all of this story are the other goddess asteroids: Hecate, Eris, Lilith, Nessus. Lilith isn't an asteroid, but you get the idea. She's a point in the sky. But these asteroids in this point are prominently placed in the charts of Trump, of Epstein, and of the United States. And when we place them on top of each other, which I'm not going to do at you today, but when we do, we notice that these goddesses Hecate, Eris, Lilith, Nessus, and Sedna. You can look up all of them and learn all about them, right? But I'm here to report that when we look at Trump and Epstein and the way their charts interact, those girls have a lot to say. And when we look at Epstein and the United States, those girls have a lot to say. And when we look at the United States and Trump, those girls have a lot to say. And when we look at the transits of what's happening in the sky right now and Trump, those girls have a lot to say. And when we look at the transits and the United States chart, those girls have a lot to say, right? So these are not random placements. The patterns are repeating in every chart we look at. These are archetypal forces doing the work of revelation right now, operating on an ancient timeline rather than political news cycles. Most indigenous cultures around the world, from the Maya to the Hopi to the Lakota to the Inca, harbor prophecies about this time period, right? What is exciting to me is that the sky seems to be telling us, and the last 2 weeks start to reveal to us, that there's a significant role for the feminine divine in what is happening to the collective consciousness and into this ticking clock of all these changes that have been prophesied, culture after culture after culture, tradition after tradition, that this time is an undoing, is a recreation of life. I'm saying that when I look at the placements of powerful, large asteroids and points dancing on this great pyramid, I see a signature that begins to reveal the role of women, of femmes, of the feminine in all of us as we face the harm and damage that has been wrought, and as we are dragged into a new age. We are, many astrologers will tell you now, in the birth canal of that new time. So here's what I think is happening. Sedna conjunct Uranus isn't just coincidence. It's cosmic support for the ancient principle that harm does not stay hidden in subtext forever. And this time, that truth is emerging through feminine archetypal forces, through survivors like Virginia Giuffre, who with her last breath promised that she was not going to depart this world on purpose. And yet she left us with another mystery to solve. She's gone. Through prosecutors like Maureen Comey and reporters like Julie Brown, through the sea goddess at a critical placement in the sky saying, enough. The betrayal of the feminine principle for millennia is showing signs of gathering that sort of oceanic power, that brute strength of the masses that comes with the converging of so many hidden narratives. Because there's a compelling history to this conjunction between Sedna and Uranus. It has a track record of transforming betrayal of the feminine into revolutionary change. Let's look at some of it. These events don't happen often, but they do have a signature to them. When added to the powerful forces of the Great Pyramid, it might be a real sign of hope for the stubborn persistence of the patriarchy and the early signs that it's just not working the way it used to. Most recently, they were together in 1931 and 1932. During that time, women are systematically fired from government jobs under something called the Economy Act. Within that law, there is a section that requires the government of the United States to fire one spouse when both are employed by the feds. And well, we can all guess which spouse that tends to be, right? The idea is to save government money by keeping households from taking too precious government salaries during the Depression, but the law functionally targets women. The idea, of course, is to push women back into domestic roles during economic crisis, but instead it creates a backlash that opens space for women to achieve historical political breakthroughs. The following year sees the first woman elected to the Senate and the first female cabinet member appointed. So we already see that this classic Sedna archetype happening within American government and politics, that betrayal of having been thrown overboard, leading to a transformation into a sort of oceanic power, right? It's subtle, but it's there. Let's look again. 1842 and 1843, when Sedna and Uranus are together, one of the places we can look is up to England and their Mines and Collieries Act of 1842, which makes it illegal for women and girls of any age to work underground in coal mines. This might sound Like a fine idea to you and me today when working at Forever 21 might sound preferable. But in 1842 England, the law, which is framed as protecting women and children from dangerous conditions, eliminates a major source of income for working class women who have been doing this work for generations. Again, making them lose independence and pushing them into lower paying surface work or domestic work. When the general strike spreads across England's industrial districts, just months later, women end up being key organizers and participants. They lead community support for striking miners, they organize resource distribution, and they maintain solidarity during the months-long strike. The voting rights and workers' protection movement that comes out of that strike also rely heavily on women. The mining ban is supposed to protect women, right? But actually makes them more economically vulnerable. And this betrayal, being excluded from work in the name of protection, radicalizes many women. They channel their anger into broader labor organizing, becoming the backbone of the very movements for workers' rights. The protection that harms them becomes the catalyst for becoming powerful and forcing systemic change. And so again, we see this pattern of a society claiming to protect women while actually betraying them, which then activates their power. And almost 100 years earlier, so it was 93 years apart that these Sedna-Uranus conjunctions come around, right? So almost 100 years earlier, a similar story unfolds in Portugal. In Lisbon, a massive earthquake strikes on All Saints' Day, while churches are packed with worshipers, killing thousands of faithful, while brothels and other sinful establishments largely survive the destruction. This is a big deal throughout Lisbon where the earthquake strikes, and it creates a kind of crisis of faith. If God protects the righteous, why do the churches collapse while brothels stand? One nun's rare firsthand account becomes one of the most important historical documents of the disaster. Women's voices and experiences suddenly become historically significant when male religious authority is questioned. The earthquake forces people to question traditional religious doctrines that blame disasters on divine punishment. I want to remind you that, like, a disaster is a sudden change, right? So Uranus. And then there's this like feminist force behind this revelation that brothels might not be evil, right? So the prime minister uses the crisis to completely modernize Portugal, breaking aristocratic and religious power and increasing the rise of reason over religious orthodoxy. Religious institutions that claim to protect the sacred feminine fail catastrophically, which creates space for new ways of thinking. Women's voices become important precisely when male religious authority begins to crumble. The destruction becomes the foundation for revolutionary rebuilding in the country of Portugal. Are you seeing a pattern here? The hypocrisy becomes obvious. If society really wants to protect women, why are conditions so dangerous in the first fucking place? Right? These events, these betrayals of women lead to a questioning of all the ways that protection can be used to limit women's power and economic independence. Every time the pattern is the same, betrayal of feminine sacredness becomes the catalyst for revolutionary change. With women's voices moving from the margins to the center of power, we see a moment that is unprecedented. But in those previous cycles, Sedna and Uranus are working alone, often under harsh aspects that create painful revelation without immediate resolution, right? Like, yes, there's some action. Yes, there's some change that the Uranus-Sedna combo brings about. But this time, that combo is part of this Great Pyramid. It's one of the 3 points on that Great Pyramid of unprecedented power, change, unmasking of delusions, conflict, consequences. While the bodies and the points in the sky that represent the goddesses, Hecate, Eris, Lilith, and Nessus, are prominently placed throughout the key charts. If you guys want like a whole episode just on these goddesses, I will do it. I just don't know if I'll hold everybody. Let me know if you want it. I'll make it. Of course, I care. Sorry, we don't just have the betrayed sea goddess merging with revolutionary change this time. We also have the witch goddess revealing the crossroads truths. That's Hecate. We also have the troublemaking disruptor exposing uncomfortable realities. That's Eris. We also have the wild feminine refusing to submit. That's Lilith. And the asteroid of sexual harm demanding justice. That's Nessus. All working together in flowing, supportive cosmic weather. The 1930s give us one woman in the Senate and one in the cabinet. This cosmic configuration suggests we are looking at something far more transformative, not just individual women breaking barriers, but feminine archetypal wisdom, reshaping the entire foundation of power itself. What I'm noticing online right now is this massive divide between what women know about assault and sexual abuse and what men understand. And honestly, this divide has always existed, but the cosmic weather is making it impossible to ignore. Women have been living with the knowledge of how widespread this harm is. We have been sharing strategies for safety. We have been believing each other's stories. We have been building networks of support and protection. Right. And there are many, many men around us who see it too, who are conscious of it too, who are allies and advocates of it too. Right. But now, under this Sedna Uranus conjunction with the Great Pyramid in play, that knowledge is being forced into holistic collective consciousness. The warrior truth-telling energy is not allowing it to stay hidden or to stay the conscious awareness of just a small group of men and then the women, right? This revelation has the cosmic support to actually transform systems rather than just expose individuals. Because here's the context we need to understand. Part of what's happening in this country generally is that the patriarchy, like America itself, is in decline. And that makes some men sad. It makes some men sad mad. We're seeing unprecedented levels of reports of male loneliness, of purposelessness, of disconnection. We're seeing grief. We're seeing fury. And we're seeing a lot of meanness online. I mean, whoa. The things men will say to you once you start a channel like this. It's been a long time since I've been spoken to the way I am now on a regular basis by men who don't know me. Trump and Epstein represented peak patriarchal success in the old paradigm. Unlimited wealth, power, access, freedom from consequences, domination over women, the ability to use and discard women who were their entertainment. When that mythology cracks, when the truth reveals the actual cost of that dominance, it creates an existential crisis for men whose identities depend on this model. We are watching our president panic very, very, very publicly as he meets that crisis. But here's what the Great Pyramid configuration reveals. The crack in patriarchal mythology is not just destruction, it is revolutionary opportunity. When old power structures become unsustainable, space opens for something new. The goddess energy is not anti-masculine. It's calling for an evolved masculinity based on connection rather than domination, collaboration rather than control. Michael Wolff, who's been trying to get media attention for his knowledge about the Trump-Epstein relationship, said something fascinating this weekend. In an interview with David Rebnick at The New Yorker, he was asked about how this would play out in MAGA. He observed that Trump has gotten caught, quote, on his own petard. Wolff points out that the right built their entire movement around exposing Democrats to connected to Epstein. But they overlooked that Trump's relationship was deeper and longer than Clinton's. Wolff even said this may be the beginning of Donald Trump's lame duck years. The cosmic timing supports that insight. In fact, speaking of Lilith, one of the goddesses, the rageful feminine divine, she has returned to the place on the president's birth chart that she was when he was born. Lilith returns are no joke, I am here to tell you. They are reckoning with the consequences of domination. More on that another time, but I am telling you that that is one of the things going on with this president's chart. So in Sedna, the goddess of strength from betrayal conjuncts Uranus, the Promethean force in this world. While you're experiencing a Lilith return, you are not just facing political consequences. You are caught. You are caught in an archetypal pattern of betrayal, transforming into revolutionary change. And this time, that revolution has unprecedented cosmic support and is kind of pointed right at you. That's what's happening to our president right now. He has an opportunity. When we face these reckonings, we can come alive, right? We can find remorse. We can seek redemption. I don't see a lot of signs that that's how he'll handle it, but that is the spot he's in. We've all been in a spot like that. We've all made decisions about how to handle it. That's the choice he's got now. Remorse and redemption? So what does this unprecedented cosmic weather actually require of the rest of us? What is our spiritual assignment during this rarest of alignments? Well, we recognize that we're living through a historical pattern that has been building for centuries. The systematic betrayal of feminine sacredness, from failed religious authority to economic exploitation to sexual trafficking or sexual secrets of the powerful men, has reached the point where it must transform into revolutionary change. The cosmos demands it. We also need to stop waiting for external saviors, y'all, political or otherwise, to reveal hidden truths. The truth tellers are already here. They are the survivors who have been speaking all along. Our job is to amplify their voices, support their healing, and fight for a world within which there are systems that prevent future harm. No longer can we be a society that is rooted in sexual domination and destruction of women. Period. If we embrace that revolutionary timing, if we leverage this great pyramid with Sedna, Uranus at its heart, the configuration that offers revolutionary support for the next 2 years, the energy is flowing, it's supportive, it's unprecedented. History shows that when hidden truths about power structures emerge during these rare conjunctions, societies transform completely. But it requires people willing to act on the revelations rather than just consume them as entertainment. I mean, it has been fun, but now what, right? The goddess asteroids threading through all these charts are not asking us to be nice. They are asking us to be powerful. Sedna becomes the goddess who controls the sea after surviving betrayal and dismemberment. Lilith refuses to submit and becomes the force of the wild feminine wisdom. Hecate illuminates the crossroads and guides travelers to the threshold moments. Eris creates the discord that leads to necessary upheaval. These are not victim archetypes. These are forces of transformation, and they have more cosmic support right now than they have ever had in human history. Because ultimately what we're witnessing operates on an ancient timeline, not on political news cycles. Whether Trump recovers politically from this crisis misses the larger pattern. Whether his base rallies around him now and ignores the cosmic forces at work, we are watching archetypal energies of truth and revelation that have been building since this rare configuration began and will continue until it begins to dissipate in 2028. The timing is precise. Sedna conjunct Uranus continues for 2 more years, offering sustained revolutionary opportunity. The Great Pyramid holds, providing flowing support for transformation rather than just destruction. The goddess asteroids remain activated in ongoing transits, continuing their work of revelation and justice. continuing their work on the birth chart of our president and of our nation. The pattern is clear. From 300 years of history of this Sedna Uranus conjunction, betrayal of the feminine sacred becomes a catalyst for revolutionary transformation. Churches that failed to protect the sacred were destroyed, while those who honored feminine wisdom survived. Women banned from traditional roles became the backbone of revolutionary moments. Economic betrayal became the foundation for unprecedented feminist political power. This time, the betrayal involves the trafficking and abuse of women and children by at least one of the most powerful men in the world. And this time, that betrayal has the support of the most revolutionary cosmic alignment in human history to transform it into something entirely new. This is our moment. Not because we're victims of patriarchal harm, but because we're agents of archetypal truth, with the universe itself supporting our work. The configuration in our sky is cosmic weather that says transform betrayal into oceanic power. Speak truth with warrior energy, and trust that revolutionary change is not just possible, but actually cosmically guaranteed. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. The cosmos supports it with unprecedented force this time, and we get to participate in the rarest transformation in nearly a century. I mean, we've been reading about little girls and women who make brave choices all of our lives, right? Louisa May Alcott's timeless classic, Little Women, includes a main character, Jo, who thinks about acting bravely in this world in an impactful way. She says, I want to do something splendid, something heroic or wonderful that won't be forgotten after I'm dead. I don't know what, but I'm on the watch for it, and I mean to astonish you all someday. She talks about paddling her own canoe, right? Just like Sedna. Jo March understood something that the cosmic weather is teaching us, that a woman with a skill or a passion and the courage to use it can affect her own way in this world. She knew that feminine truth-telling isn't about being nice or proper or waiting for permission. It's about refusing to be silenced, about transforming every constraint into creative power, about insisting that our stories matter, even when, especially when, the world tries to diminish them. Jo's fierce independence and unwillingness to conform to what others expected of her embodies the Sedna energy we're seeing activated now. The understanding that sometimes you have to fall into the sea and become the goddess of it, rather than let anyone else decide your fate, has taken hold here. The truth tellers are already here, paddling their own canoes through treacherous water. The question isn't whether they'll reach the other shore, it's whether the rest of us are brave enough to follow, brave enough to lead. How will you lead? Okay, Kate. So what now? Well, okay, first, we have an action. What can you do to help this Epstein story finally live? What can you do now to extend the conversation long enough that we might see real justice for the women harmed? Real attention to reform, real changes to rape culture, real shifts in how we all talk about women, real changes in the absurd beauty standards that keep women comparing themselves to, by the way, 16-year-old girls. What can you do to keep the conversation going online, in your family, in your community, in your relationships with men? How can we use this moment to actually, truly, finally change the conversation? Second, I offer a practice. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, in her iconic classic of the study of the wild woman archetype, said this: each woman has potential access to Rio Abajo Rio, this river beneath the river. She arrives there through deep meditation, dance, writing, painting, prayer making, singing, drumming, active imagination, or any activity which requires an intense, altered consciousness. A woman arrives in this world between worlds through yearning and by seeking something she can just see out of the corner of her eye. She arrives there by deeply creative acts, through intentional solitude, and by practice of any of the arts. How can you foster a practice this week through which you explore a new vehicle or expand a retired vehicle or a forgotten vehicle or a vehicle laid aside to access your feminine power? I say this to you regardless of your gender. I say this to you because all of us possess the feminine divine. How can we access our feminine divine across gender identity in order to hear the call? Remember that scene in Game of Thrones where that tiny little queen of Bear Island, Lady Mormont, stands up and she shames all the old men and she says, "You and you and you neglected to answer the call." And she says, "Bear Island remembers. We recognize no king but the king in the north, whose name is Stark. We will answer the call." That's the practice this week, is what is your call? What are you being called to do? There's an incredible children's book called The Other Way to Listen by a Tohono O'odham elder named Bird Baylor, in which an elder is teaching a young boy how to listen. And I think that's the practice right now. When you are outside, listen to the wind. When you are outside, listen to the trees. When you are outside, listen to the water. When you are inside, listen to what you're being told inside your own body. Right? What are you being called to do? How will you rise up and take your country back? And third, a reflection. Where in your own life are you being called to transform betrayal into revolutionary power? The Great Pyramid is offering unprecedented support for this kind of alchemy in our personal lives. What betrayal is ready to become oceanic power inside you? What truth needs to be spoken with warrior energy in your relationships? What system needs feminine wisdom to guide its transformation in your own life? And finally, I do want to close with a poem. It's an excerpt from Louise Iverson's Outrage. And it starts like this. It is not so much cooking, but being cooked that gets me. When the chicken goes in the oven, I'll be caught there too. My head in the oven with the gizzards and lungs, one wing caught with mine, heart, liver, entrails. At one point midway through, she says, the power of life is the integration of life, is the integration of energy. If you disintegrate, I will not help you. If you spatter red and bitter and rotten on the sidewalk, I will not pick you up, nor suckle you, nor bathe your wounds, nor mend your torn socks. A year ago, I would have said, nestle your little broken head. Broken child of the universe, but now I say scram. Okay, and here's how it ends. You condemn me as witch, as mother. I have no more any pity for you who have despised me, as succubi, as ball breaker. I tell you, you puke in your own folly. My passion is mine, nor am I vampire, nor banshee, nor screamer, nor waiting. I have turned away, and I face a distance. I have not run. I raise my fist beside the door of my dreams, and I take time, my time, all of it, in my hands. I mean, come on. It's the greatest gift, that poem. You should find it. It's really long. It's really wonderful. Okay. The cosmic timing of this moment is rare. It has never all occurred at once before in human history. It is the most intense configuration we have ever seen. The revolutionary energy is flowing through feminine archetypal forces within you, within me, no matter who we are in terms of gender. The goddess energy has unprecedented support. Your voice, your truth, your leadership matters more than you know. And history shows that this alignment delivers results. It's here for us to take. If you want to understand how these patterns are affecting you personally, I would be honored to look through your chart with you, to think through that with you, and to help you navigate that. I offer readings and coaching that help folks think this through, understand their assignment, and find their way through such an intense and complicated time. This is a once-in-a-lifetime transformational moment. Let's all seize it. If you would not mind terribly, please write a review. If you haven't yet, it would mean a lot to me. That's how these things grow. I'm sure you're aware of that. Please follow. That is also how these things grow. Please send to your friends. That is also how these things grow. The more people we can reach, the more people that can rise up together as one to create the change that we are all craving so desperately. Truth has its own force, its own timing, its own way of breaking through concealment. And this time, like no other time, that truth-telling has the rarest and most powerful support behind it. That is the weather, y'all. We are walking through that kind of weather right now. It is ours to take. It is our moment to seize. Until next time, be well, be conscious, and be kind. I'll see you soon.